kind of energy that instantly caught her attention. One had dark, slightly messy hair and eyes that seemed to look right through her, like he could see everything she was hiding, while the other had a calm, warm smile, the kind that made strangers feel like they'd known him forever. Clara's heart skipped in a way she hadn't felt in years, a strange mix of curiosity, excitement, and something deeper she couldn't yet name. She tried to focus on her book, but her eyes kept darting to them, drawn to the contrast between the playful, mischievous energy of the dark-haired man and the quiet, grounded warmth of the one who stayed slightly behind, observing the room as though it were a stage and everyone else, including her, was part of the scenery. Her thoughts spun wildly, and she couldn't explain why, but there was a pull she felt, magnetic and insistent, like the universe had nudged her into a moment she couldn't escape. Before she could stop herself, the dark-haired man Ethan stepped forward with an easy confidence that made her stomach twist in a way she would later recognize as the first signs of attraction. "Mind if we join you?" he asked, his voice smooth, gentle, yet carrying a subtle edge of charm that made her almost forget to answer. The other man, Lucas, remained just behind, watching, his gaze steady and thoughtful, as if he were cataloging every detail of her presence, every flicker of emotion across her face. Clara swallowed hard and nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips, telling herself it was just polite, that this was only a chance encounter, but deep down, she knew it was something more, something that would unravel the quiet certainty of her life. As Ethan slid into the chair across from her, their conversation began effortlessly, with laughter spilling out between them, stories exchanged, and jokes that made her forget the rest of the world. Lucas finally joined, and though quieter, his words carried weight, every sentence chosen carefully, leaving her mind swirling with a mix of admiration and intrigue. She noticed the way he listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak, but truly hearing her, and it made her heart ache in a way she hadn't expected. Hours passed almost unnoticed, sunlight fading into the golden glow of late afternoon, casting warmth across the shop, highlighting Ethan's playful grin and Lucas's quiet intensity. Clara realized she had never felt such a pull to two people at once, the simultaneous thrill of spontaneity and the comfort of understanding, and the sensation was dizzying, overwhelming, and intoxicating. She tried to ground herself, reminding herself to be rational, to remember that she barely knew them, but every word, every glance, felt like a thread weaving her into something she couldn't yet define. When the men finally stood to leave, Ethan gave a small, teasing bow, and Lucas lingered for a moment, a folded piece of paper slipping subtly into her bag without her noticing, a silent promise that their connection wasn't over. Clara's mind raced, her pulse still quick, as she watched them leave, realizing that something rare had happened, something that would not be easily dismissed. She packed her things slowly, feeling a strange mix of fear and exhilaration, knowing that her heart had already started a journey she hadn't chosen, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to wonder if perhaps love didn't arrive quietly. After all, it came like a storm, sudden and all-consuming, leaving you breathless, uncertain, and completely changed in the span of a single afternoon. Walking home. She couldn't stop replaying their laughter, their words, the way their eyes had met hers, and a flutter of anticipation mingled with apprehension stirred deep in her chest. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, a thrilling, terrifying awakening that made her realize the ordinary world she thought she knew could no longer contain her heart. That night, as she sat alone in her apartment, the folded note from Lucas resting unnoticed in her bag, she couldn't stop thinking about them, the way Ethan had made her laugh until her cheeks ached, the way Lucas had listened like he understood the parts of her she never showed anyone, the way their presence had filled the empty corners of her day with warmth and light. Clara didn't yet know how the story would unfold, didn't know if she would see them again, or what that would mean for her carefully ordered life, but she felt an undeniable certainty in one thing: something extraordinary had begun, and she could not, and would not, turn away from it. And as sleep finally claimed her, her dreams were filled with laughter, soft glances, and the unspoken promise of moments yet to come, leaving her heart both restless and hopeful, suspended between the excitement of the unknown and the fragile, thrilling possibility of love that might just be bigger than she had ever imagined. Clara's thoughts over the next week became a whirlwind she could neither control nor ignore, as Ethan and Lucas occupied her mind in completely different, yet equally compelling ways, each leaving a mark she couldn't dismiss, and every ordinary moment seemed infused with anticipation, wonder, and the ache of longing. She replayed the day at the coffee shop repeatedly, remembering the way Ethan's laughter had been like sunlight spilling into her chest, warm and infectious, making even her most cautious thoughts feel light and free, while Lucas's quiet presence lingered like a soft echo, a shadow of understanding and attention that had settled into her mind and refused to leave, both men pulling at her heart in directions that felt impossible to reconcile. Her friends noticed the change immediately. Jenna teased her relentlessly about the glow on her face and the absent-minded smiles, asking if it was someone new, someone she had met, and Clara only laughed awkwardly, unsure herself how to explain the impossible truth that her heart, usually so cautious and disciplined, had expanded in two different directions at once, drawn toward two people who were nothing alike yet equally captivating. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind wandered constantly to Ethan's playful teasing, the way he made her feel lighter than air, spontaneous and daring, and then shifted to Lucas's thoughtful gaze, the weight of his words that made her feel seen in a way that frightened and thrilled her simultaneously, leaving her heart beating in unpredictable rhythms. One evening, as she walked home from work, her thoughts spinning faster than her steps, she discovered a folded note in her bag that she hadn't noticed before, the neat, deliberate handwriting unmistakably Lucas's, and her pulse jumped with a mixture of fear and excitement as she unfolded it to read the words. "I don't know if you'll read this, but I couldn't leave without letting you know. I want to see you again. Lucas." The note stirred something deep inside her, a longing she hadn't been able to name, and immediately she felt torn, because that very night Ethan had sent a text asking her to dinner, playful and familiar, full of the same warmth that had made her laugh so freely in the coffee shop, and Clara realized with a sharp, dizzying clarity that her feelings were not simple, that they could not be neatly sorted or labeled, and that she was standing at the edge of a choice she was not ready to make, a choice that felt less like an opportunity and more like a test of her heart's capacity to handle something it had never faced before. As she walked along the quiet streets, the city lights flickering against the wet pavement from an earlier rain, she felt a strange combination of exhilaration and panic, realizing that the ordinary life she had known, the calm, predictable days, were gone forever, replaced by an emotional storm she had no instructions to navigate, and yet a part of her thrilled at the uncertainty, at the possibility that love could be messy, complicated, and beautiful all at once. She remembered Ethan's grin as he had teased her about spilling her latte, the easy laughter that had followed, and she contrasted it with Lucas's quiet smile when he had helped her gather her things after she tripped on the curb, the intensity of his gaze that made her heart swell and ache at the same time, and she realized that she was living in two worlds of emotion simultaneously, each one complete and vital, each one impossible to let go of. That night, unable to sleep, she found herself pacing her small apartment, the note from Lucas resting on the table beside her, her phone buzzing intermittently with texts from Ethan asking what she was doing, and every message, every thought, every memory of their faces and voices tangled together in a web she did not want to untangle, because to untangle it would be to make a choice she wasn't sure she was ready to make, and the thought of losing either of them was unbearable. Clara's journal became her confidant, her only safe space to explore the storm of emotions inside her, and she wrote furiously, spilling words that tried to capture the impossible nature of her heart, the laughter and light Ethan brought, the depth and understanding Lucas offered, and the way she felt herself being pulled toward both of them without logic or reason, only feeling, a raw, undeniable longing that made her question everything she thought she knew about love. Days passed, each one a careful balancing act between the spontaneous calls from Ethan, the quiet invitations from Lucas, and her own growing realization that her heart refused to choose, that perhaps it was meant to experience more than one kind of love at the same time, and in this realization came a terrifying freedom, a clarity that was both beautiful and frightening, because she knew she could not continue pretending her feelings were simple when they were anything but. Her friends tried to offer advice, to tell her she needed to pick one, that her heart could not stretch in two directions, but Clara shook her head, smiling softly, knowing they could not understand the complexity of the connection she felt with each of them. The way Ethan's energy lifted her and Lucas's presence grounded her, and she began to wonder if love itself was bigger than the rules she had always been taught, if it could exist fully in multiple forms, each one valid, each one necessary. Then came the evening she could no longer resist, the night when she finally agreed to meet Lucas at a quiet park near the river, a place he said he liked because it was calm, away from distractions, and as she approached, she saw him standing there, the city lights twinkling behind him, his posture relaxed but his eyes intense, and the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, the noise and chatter of her life falling away as she took a tentative step closer. Lucas smiled, and Clara felt a strange shiver, a mixture of recognition and relief, as though she had been searching for this moment without knowing it, and their conversation began slowly, carefully, with pauses and glances that carried more meaning than words, and every smile and every subtle movement drew her closer to a truth she had been afraid to face, that her heart had room for both love and longing, that it could hold contradictions without breaking, that it could love fully in ways she had never imagined. By the time she left the park that night, the air cool and crisp around her, Clara realized she was standing on the edge of a new chapter, one where the rules she had always followed no longer applied, and where she would have to trust herself, trust her feelings, and trust that love, in all its messy, beautiful, unpredictable glory, could guide her through what came next. She carried both Ethan and Lucas in her heart, their laughter, their quiet smiles, their voices and eyes, all tangled into a tapestry that made her pulse race and her mind whirl, and though the path ahead was uncertain, she felt a thrilling sense of possibility, knowing that the storm she had stumbled into might be the very thing that would awaken her to a love she never knew she could hold. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the city sounds soft and distant, Clara whispered to herself, half in fear, half in hope, can one heart really hold two loves? And for the first time, she felt certain that the answer might just be yes, that perhaps the heart could stretch, could bend, could embrace the impossible, and that she would let it, letting herself feel fully, completely, without shame or hesitation, even if it meant stepping into a future that was untamed, unpredictable, and entirely her own, and she smiled softly, knowing that tomorrow, with all its choices and complications, would be a day worth waking up to. Clara's heart felt like it was being pulled in two directions at once, and the week that followed was a whirlwind of laughter, longing, and confusion as she tried to navigate the emotions Ethan and Lucas stirred in her, each encounter leaving her breathless, exhilarated, and deeply unsettled all at once. She spent a dazzling evening with Ethan, wandering through the bustling streets of Boston, the city alive with lights, music, and the hum of life around them, feeling completely present and utterly free when he took her hand and laughed at the simplest things. His energy infectious, his confidence effortless, and in his presence, Clara felt lighter, as if she could float above all her worries, the world shrinking to just the two of them and the warmth that radiated from his every gesture. Yet even as she laughed, even as her chest ached with the joy of being seen and appreciated, Lucas's quiet, steady presence hovered in the back of her mind, a persistent shadow that she couldn't shake, a pull so subtle yet so powerful that it made her pulse quicken even in moments of solitude, and she realized with startling clarity that these feelings were not fleeting or superficial, they were real, complex, and demanding more from her heart than she had ever experienced before. The next afternoon, she found herself meeting Lucas at a small park near the river, where the air was crisp and the sounds of the city felt distant, almost muted, leaving space for the quiet intimacy that existed between them, the kind that required no words to convey understanding, trust, and a deep, almost unbearable attraction that felt different from Ethan's playful fire, more like a steady flame that warmed her from the inside, a presence that made her feel seen in ways she hadn't even realized she needed. As they walked slowly, side by side, Clara felt herself drawn to his calm intensity, the way he listened to her thoughts without interruption, the way his eyes seemed to hold the depth of 1,000 unspoken feelings, and she found herself sharing things she had never shared with anyone before, stories, fears, dreams, and even the quiet confusion she felt about loving two people at once, and Lucas listened, never judging, never rushing, simply holding the space for her heart to speak freely, which only made her feelings for him deepen, becoming more urgent, more complicated, and impossible to ignore. That week was a dizzying mixture of joy and tension, as Clara alternated between Ethan's vibrant energy and Lucas's calming presence, each interaction leaving her more entangled in her own emotions, questioning everything she had believed about love, fidelity, and the rules she had always thought were absolute, realizing that perhaps her heart was capable of holding more than she had ever imagined, and that the clarity she sought might never come from choosing between them but from understanding the fullness of what each brought into her life. Her days were filled with laughter, teasing messages from Ethan, spontaneous outings, and a kind of exhilaration she hadn't felt in years, while her nights were spent reflecting on the quiet, profound moments with Lucas, the lingering glances, the thoughtful words, the small gestures that left her heart aching in the most beautiful way, and she began to notice how her emotions had expanded, how love could feel different with different people yet be equally valid, equally necessary, leaving her torn, but not regretful, because each connection was unique, irreplaceable, and essential to her sense of self. One evening, she found herself sitting alone on a park bench after a long walk with Lucas, the city lights reflecting on the water, the air crisp with the promise of winter, and she realized that the tension in her chest was not from confusion alone, but from longing, a longing that was both terrifying and exhilarating, a recognition that she was in the midst of something extraordinary, something rare and fragile, that required courage, honesty, and an openness to a love that defied conventional rules. She scribbled notes in her journal, desperate to make sense of the storm inside her, yet knowing she could not control it, could not plan it, could only feel it, allowing her heart to guide her through the moments, the laughter, the silences, and the quiet intimacies that tethered her to both men in ways that were undeniable, magnetic, and emotionally consuming. The realization came slowly, painfully, and beautifully. She could not choose one over the other, not because she was indecisive, but because both had become essential to the rhythm of her heart, each in a different way, each representing a piece of herself she had not fully understood until now, and the thought of letting either go felt like erasing a part of her own soul,